Hey everybody. So the clip that you're about to watch is from my interview with Leah Lavigne from OK Cowgirl.
Ability just looks like trash.
The full interview will be out soon, but for now, here is one of my favorite clips from the interview, and I really hope you enjoy. So you have a very eclectic mix of styles, and specifically, I want to talk about the first song on this deluxe, Remember. Yeah, it has obviously very minimal lyrics. I believe it's only a few lines, but the production on that, I was really a fan of that because I don't know, I'm a huge fan of Pink Floyd, and it really kind of brought me back to like that when I discovered Pink Floyd, that like the synthy background with those electric guitar like single notes being hit like in between. It's like really spacey, and I was a huge fan of that, and I'd love to know like where the inspiration or form of this style came from, because it's obviously a bit of a departure from what your band is used to releasing.
Yeah, I think you say it, and that is exactly it to me. This is a song about getting lost in your own head, and I did really want it to feel spacious. Like sometimes you're just so deep back in that cavern all alone, and yeah, the actual sounds that we ended up using, we actually started working on this when we were back in the studio. We recorded the record at Drop of Sun in Asheville, North Carolina, and we would record every day from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. Then we'd go out to dinner, get a drink, whatever. We were staying in an apartment that was attached to the studio, and the people who run the studio are super chill. They're like, "Oh yeah, if you guys want to like go play around with stuff at night, like that's fine." And so we ended up like at the end of the night when we come back from dinner, we just all end up sitting on the floor, like playing around with different vintage drum machines and synths and just exploring all these like cool, rare toys that we'd never seen before. And my drummer Matt started playing around with this like vintage drum machine and found that beat, created that pattern or whatever with those sounds. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, that feels like Remember to me. And he was like, oh, like, what do you mean? And so then we like walked over to the synth wall, and I was like, John, who is super knowledgeable about synths. I was like, let's make a patch that like feels like really, really luscious and like big. And so we started playing around with that. And then Jake started like adding on some like sparse little like notes that to me feel kind of like fairy dust or something. And and the song only had like, as you said, like a couple lines of lyrics, but I really wanted the song to feel sort of meditative and trance-like. And so, I was just kind of directing them to play these things on loop. We had a couple, I was like, play the A section, now play the B section, repeat the B section, and I started just sort of singing over it. Um, and we didn't hit record though. We were just like doing that. And so again, when it came to record this deluxe, I was like, guys, remember that night at Drop of Sun when we like did that crazy jam on Remember? And they were like, yeah, that was awesome. I was like, we should recreate that. And so that was our mission, to try to like recapture that, that sleepy haze of being in the studio all day and going out and having a couple beers and coming back and just, sitting on the carpeted floor, like holding like a little thing in your hand, and that sort of, yeah, that sleepy little cocoon, that also felt kind of like spacious and like you could just kind of wander off and get lost in it. And, that's probably, oh God, I don't want to pick favorites. Never mind. I take back the beginning of that
No,
sentence.
feel free. Feel
But
free.
that song, that that song means a lot to me. And if you haven't just peeped into it, I'll state the lyrics if I can remember them. It says, um, I've been trying to get there, I've been waiting to get there, to get where the water meets the sky. I am where I once wanted to be. If that mind could see this body, then I could remember. And I'm like a big water person. Like I love swimming. I love being in the water. My parents live on Lake Huron in
Mhm.
Michigan.
Yeah.
And so when I go home to visit them, I always end up just like being out in the lake, for a couple hours a day. And one summer I was like home visiting and I was just like, walking around in the lake, floating on my back, like whatever, wasting time. And I was like thinking about just that phenomenon of the horizon and how it always changes and how like I'm standing here and I see what looks like a specific point of where the water meets the sky. But if I swam out to that point, the horizon would then be at a different point. Like you'll never, it's not a flat earth, right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
never
yeah.
gonna reach the edge. And like I felt like that was a really good metaphor for how I felt in my life where, I um was setting these goals for myself and um I would reach some of them, but for some reason, I just never felt satisfied. I was, in my mid-20s. I was a couple years out of school, and I'd been pursuing music for so long and trying to find a way to pay my bills that wasn't miserable. And I just started to feel so worn out and like kind of like a failure. And I was kind of at this breaking point, and I had to like realize, like, okay, I'm swimming really hard out here trying to get to this point, but it's like it's moving. Like I'm never gonna feel like, oh, I got there. And that's a good thing, because
Yeah, yeah.
what happened? You accomplish all your goals and dreams. Like, then what do you do with your life? And so I had to sort of like change my perspective and to be like, oh, well, if that mind, if, me from 5 years ago, 10 years ago could see where I'm at now, could see the stages I'm playing now, could see like, the friends I've made, could see the life of myself, that old mind would be so, that old Leah would be so proud of me and so excited about that. But like, I'm just lost in the sauce right here. Like, I keep forgetting and I keep getting so caught up with just swimming
Yeah.
further. And I need to stop and realize, like, oh, wait, like, I am making progress. I am, like, moving in the right direction. And that's worth celebrating. I don't need to wait to celebrate till I'm at the top of the world. Like, I deserve to celebrate myself now. I've done a lot of really good work and it's been hard and tiring and I'm I'm on the right path and this it was just sort of like a really big shift in perspective that I needed to learn in my mid-20s and that's what that song's about. So I think also the spaciousness sort of like it made sense musically because to me that song floating and lake that has no end.
Yeah. I mean, I find that story like super, not only like relatable, but also just like powerful. And the way you presented it was really cool. It actually reminds me very closely of because I'm a film student, and so I obviously look into that stuff a lot more than I do music. But getting into music more, it's helping me build that connection, and it reminds me really closely to that. I believe it was Matthew McConaughey's Oscar acceptance speech from like 10-ish years ago.
And to my hero, that's who I chase.
Where it's very
Oh wow,
famous
I
now,
don't think I've
but
ever seen it.
yeah. So he mentions, he said when I forgot exactly how old he said he was, but for example, he said I was 20 years old and someone asked me, uh, "Who's your hero?" And he said, "Oh, I need some time to think about it." And he took some time to think about it, and he came back to this person and he said, "My hero is me in 10 years." And so 10 years go by and this this guy comes back to him and says, "Well, did you meet your hero?" And he says, "No, no, I did not. No, my hero is me in 10 years from now." And then in 10 years, it's going to be 10 years from then, and it's going to keep going. And that's okay. He's never going to be his hero, but it gives him something to shoot for. And I think I think it's the acceptance of knowing that maybe there are some goals that aren't reachable, but the fact that they're there just gives you something to work for and something to aim towards. And that alone can give you conviction and motivation to really push for something. And I find that like a really interesting and special way to look at it, because usually the point of a goal is you want to complete it because the act of completing it makes you feel best. But sometimes you need a goal that you can't complete to really get you to push yourself. And I really found that super powerful.